So, welcome to the Apex Perspective podcast. Today, I have with me Chira Senapati, who is currently an engineering leader at AWS. Now, Chira, can you tell me a little bit more about your background? I've seen you started off as a protocol engineer, particularly early in your career. You led as a software engineer at Cisco, and of course, now you're the engineering leader at AWS. Can you tell me a little bit more from your perspective, more about why you first chose to become technical and what led you to AWS?
Yeah, fair enough. That's a great question. Not haven't answered this question in a while, but it's
Yeah.
high time. I think about it, and it has been a long journey now. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I started as a physics grad, and with a bachelor in electronics. But
Mm-hmm.
I always had a love for networking since my undergrad days. So that led me into networking. And if you see, networking kind of evolved in late 2000s and then early 2010s, and that was the gateway for me to get into AWS, because networking is no longer standalone networking right now. It
Mm-hmm.
is more around AWS networking. It's more around
Okay.
cloud networking. I would not say AWS. It's more around cloud networking.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a natural change for me. But again,
Mm-hmm.
to be very very transparent, I'm one of those persons who has always chosen not standard things. I would say
Sure.
I've never been afraid of trying new things. I have been into different teams. I have tried devices side of things. I have tried advertisements. So all these things. Again, I'm a platform person. So let me put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you talk about networking or you talk about platform, I consider both as the same. And I'm more of a platform person, so I build systems. So
Right.
systems which powers like millions and millions of users. And that was the kind of the journey how I ended up in networking. So starting with physics, right now taking turns around getting into devices, then into advertisements, and then coming back into AWS again. So
Very
that's been
good. Very good. Well, tell me this. What was the reason why you chose to become technical in the first place? What was the decision-making process behind that?
So let me put it this way, right? I never chose to become a leader, engineering leader first. So
Mm-hmm.
my always the goal was to become a engineering person, or basically a hands-on person, right? So
Mm-hmm.
once I became a hands-on person, at one point I saw that my impact was being limited just by
Mm-hmm.
because of me. So
Okay.
how I wanted to scale and the amount of impact I wanted to make, that was a natural progression for me to get into leadership at that point. So
Right. Right.
when you're scaling, when you're impacting 1x or 2x 3x, it's possible when you're in IC. But when you want
Mm-hmm.
to impact at a 10x scale, 50x scale, or 100x scale, that's not possible when you're in IC at that point. So
Right.
that was again, it didn't happen. I had a couple of mentors in the past when we were brainstorming, and they told me that it seems like a natural progression for me. Tried it for a couple of years, and then eventually transitioned 100% into leadership roles at that point.
Very good. So what was interesting about that is a lot of the principal engineers I talk to, there's a particular point in their career and highly technical people in which they realize they're not only wanting to understand the technical side of things, but they want to understand the business outcomes. So
Yes,
where's that point? And you're just hitting that point just now. What was
yes,
that point in your journey where you realized this is actually a critical thing to understand and maximize impact with your skill set?
yes. So this happened in uh, early, I think I would say 2020. So
Hmm.
probably in COVID. So when basically essentially this happened in AWS itself. When I was at AWS, I think the impact from the perspective of engineering side of things. See, I have
Hmm.
been a platform person. That's one. And again, same thing is AWS is a huge organization. That's the second thing.
Hmm.
And the third thing, we're now talking about how the impact is measured. Impact is measured not just in terms of your technical skills, and also in terms of the business impact per se, right?
Right.
So when you just look at 100x impact or 150x or 100x impact from where you are in IC days, it has to come from both the side of things. And that's when I got mentored by a few people in my organization to get into this leadership role. Tried it for a few 6 months, and then I started looking at the business impact from that perspective. I was leading teams, which was, I mean, I can't put a dollar value because it's the foundational of a lot of AWS EC2
Certainly.
is AWS EC2 used to be a foundational service and which powers every single thing, right? Especially in this one. So it's a multi-million dollar business, and when you're growing over 20% year over year, I don't remember what is the latest ARR. But when
Mhm.
you're growing so much, you need to have a business acumen to take decisions, which actually, I mean, it starts with business and goes back to technical side of things. Let me
Right.
put it that way.
Reverse
So
engineer to technical.
yes, so that's what I think. Your business goals cannot be met until unless in my case at least, it helped me a lot because given that I had the technical acumen in terms of
Mhm.
what we want to build, what we want to ship for customers. So in this case, yes, I think the business acumen deliverables or business outcomes
Mhm.
will is a path, but
Mhm.
the path has to be strengthened by the technical skills that you have. It helps a
Right.
lot.
Right. Very good. And what was really interesting first, what I want to tackle is really your perspective on hiring. So my understanding is that as an engineering leader, you have input on the hiring process. Now,
Yes.
certain skills are very difficult to attain, and certain people, in terms of long-term growth, are very difficult to attain as well. What do you look for when you're building your teams to carry on certain projects?
Yeah, so a great question, by the way. So hiring is one of the most touchy topics you'll
Mm-hmm.
ask any leader. So one of
Mm-hmm.
the things that a few things. Let me talk about what is necessary when I'm looking for a hire, right? So one
Mm-hmm.
thing is person not being afraid of taking risks. That one thing. Also, not being afraid of trying things out. That's one. And another thing, working well with the team. So a leader is a replicate. I mean, leader is a face of the team. So if the person, if I think that is one of the most important things. So I think uh, what normally when I hire leaders, I think at that point I have to make sure that they understand what the business is. That's one,
Mm-hmm.
and have solved similar problems in the past, if not the same. Making sure, trying to understand what decisions they have taken, the situations that they have gone through in the past, and also the kind of people they have had, I mean, kind of team they have built. So
Mm-hmm.
I think these are the three kind of most important examples that I normally look at when I'm hiring. And last but not the least, how good are the person at being an IC? For example, how can they, I mean, can they roll up their sleeves and get hands on when the things are needed?
Love it.
I mean, see, at the end of that's not a necessity, but it's a very good to have things. So,
Mm-hmm.
see, essentially a progression from IC to a technical person is what I have normally looked at. And if a
Mm-hmm.
person has been an IC in the past, and if required, they can be hands-on. So that's a very good win-win for me. I think that is one of the most important things that I normally look for when I'm kind of hiring a leader. See, but it's not a necessity. It's not a necessity. Not every area
Mm-hmm.
might require that, but it is good to have that.
Mhm. Excellent. Now, when it comes to understanding their technical skills, what do you measure? What do you place the most value in? Is it their thought process or is it the outcome they can produce in the moment? What's more valuable to you?
It is actually both. I would say
Okay.
thought process is a precursor to the outcomes. So,
Hmm.
so, and the thought process is again, there is nothing right or wrong. That's one thing. So, a leader is the one who should be open to getting ideas bounced from the ICs and be able to
Hmm.
lead them in a right direction, taking a lot of inputs. So, that is where the thought process comes in. So, they should be able to push their team to think critically and push them hard from the perspective of what they're not thinking about. What are the different areas that could be explored, what has not been explored, what are the different edge cases it could be, what are the different outcomes it could be, right? Once these
Hmm.
are the things that happens, this is actually the precursor to the outcomes that we are talking about. So
Yes.
basically it cannot be either or it has to be both with the
Very
right balance
interesting.
of both.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a very interesting answer. I think I've actually interviewed a couple of engineering managers from Google, and a lot of them also place what they have informed me is that it's not only important about the outcome they produce in the moment, it's actually the thought process. The thought
Yeah.
process indicates what are they capable of long term, what are they
Yes.
also able to add value to the team in a unique way. There are some different things that you can actually gain from the thought process itself, not just the outcome in the moment. A business perspective is what can someone do in the moment, what are they capable of producing, what are they capable of potentially doing down the line. But I think there's less emphasis on that thought process. I think that's why I think it's a critical component to be thought about and to be involved in the process. Now, as far as creating enterprise value, when you have these specific objectives, how do you balance both the business side of leadership and at the same time understanding how to create a strong technical understanding and leading that part of your team to create enterprise value?
Not sure if I understood the question. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah,
Sorry about.
of course, of course. So when you're approaching creating enterprise value, I think you discussed the important component in process is for you to reverse engineer the process. So
Yes.
what is that particular process that you have in place? Are there certain principles in that process that you have that you follow for every particular
Uh,
objective you have?
See, one of the so let's talk about. I think here it comes about philosophies. That's one.
Mhm,
So one of my philosophies is we and see not everybody knows everything. That's one thing. So
mhm,
I think as a leader, I think at most of the times we have to take few of the business decisions and also and lean more on data inputs and also be open for things that you have not experienced in the past. So my philosophy is don't be very much super stressed or super linked to data points. That's one. Data points is necessary, but at the same time also look for things that somebody brings to the table that someone else
mhm,
has that you not have seen to the table. That's one thing. So
mhm,
so data points is definitely one of the things that you need to look at, and obviously
mhm,
because you have to look out, watch out for red flags, watch out for
mhm,
things that doesn't work for the team. See, at the end of the day, when you're hiring again, there are, I mean, we can talk about because I hire both ICs and leaders. So
mhm,
when you're hiring ICs and leaders, so one thing is obviously that the functional side of things you look at, and the technical side of things also you look at. But when you're looking at leaders, you look at more on the functional side of things. That's one. So
mhm.
when you look at the functional side of things, the philosophy I follow is definitely go for the data points that you get. Also try to look for something that the person is actually getting to the team, getting to the table that their team doesn't have right now to offer. For an example, I mean, I have hired people in the past who were really good technical leaders, but they were very early in their careers for their management side of things, right? In that way,
Mhm.
I definitely saw that a person could be groomed a little bit and could be become a strong leader because the amount of technical depth that they were bringing to the table was enormous, right?
Mhm.
And depending on the situation and the kind of role, so you have to take those judgment calls all the time. If the person is really strong but and you see a lot of data points from the person being groomed into a solid leader within the organization, so these are kind of things that you don't ignore and you definitely go for it.
Okay.
So
Okay.
and again, so this is where I think a lot of these critical decisions that you have to make on the fly, and also
Mhm.
look out for your, I mean, basically bank on your philosophies, but also don't be too much stressed on asking for the data points. You have to be very, very open-minded in terms of what additional things that person is bringing onto the table.
Yeah. And you mentioned people management specifically. I think that a lot of what you've done in your career is lead these engineering teams. So what is your approach to aligning them on a particular target? How do you approach people leadership?
So fair enough, great question. So what happens is again, this is my philosophy in terms of how I grew as a
Of
lead, I
course.
mean engineer to a leader and being in a leadership role, right? So one of the things that I have philosophic, I mean one of the things that I have in, I mean again, for being in the different roles and different organizations, one of the things that I normally notice in the past is when you're an engineer, you are very, very heads down on, hey, what is my ask? What problem am I solving? How do I solve it?
Mhm.
I think the this is the what part, right? Or the how part, you'd say. But what is the outcome? Or what is
Right.
the business or the business outcome? So business
Mhm.
outcome is something that in my experience, I never took a look in my early part of my career. So
Mhm.
so this is the gap. This is where I start my work backwards plan. So my work
Right.
backwards plan is what are you actually delivering? What is the business outcome? For an example, let's say for example, right? Let's take an example. Are we building a cellular network for a customer? What is the customer like?
Mhm.
What is the customer pain points that you're trying to solve? Work
Mhm.
backwards from that. And then once you work backwards from that, what is the next thing? Are you building infrastructure? Are you building software? Or are you adding improvements? Then once you identify the areas that you want to solve, then you talk about how do you solve that. So basically the what part, sorry, I should say the what part is the business outcome that I
Mhm.
as an engineer, I kind of never took a look at in my early part of the
Mhm.
career. I think
Mhm.
I could have gotten a lot during that time. So that is where I start with my engineers. I start with, I mean, what are they solving for? And then the
Mhm.
second part is why and how are they solving for. So
Right.
so that is where actually we look for. So, I mean, this is the philosophy that I've have normally, where I groom my engineers to start with the work backwards plan, start at the business outcome. What are we
Mhm.
solving? What are we solving for customers? And then come back to the technical side of things. Technical side
Got
of
it.
things, parts, not the exact whole thing.
And that's for execution, which is a very a good plan. Only because I've heard this a lot from other highly advanced technical people as well, so I can appreciate the perspective. Now, as far as your leadership approach, there are various different leaders who have their own, or even CEOs and entrepreneurs that have their own particular perspectives on leadership itself, on leading people. How do you approach leading people, especially as there potentially are people who have their own individual skill set gaps? So
Yeah,
how do you approach leading that groups of people essentially? What is your
yeah.
particular approach to that?
See, one my philosophy is, with the right support and with the right time and with the right dedication, you can actually groom anyone.
Hmm.
So that's one. So if you have a set of people who are actually good in their own ways, and you are building a team, if you give the right amount of support, if you give them right guidance, you can you can build an excellent team. So
Yeah.
when you are, again, let me put it this way, right? Uh, a team is a leader is what the team essentially is at that point. So
Hmm.
you make sure that you take the team along. That's one thing. And the second thing is, you give the right inputs and also the right mechanisms in place, and the right the right deliverables, or sorry, I would say rather, right grooming in place to bring the people where they need to be. And also make sure that it is not bottoms up, it's top down. And in
Hmm.
this case, so the top down, the reason I'm saying is because you need to tell your team where they need to be in the next
Hmm.
2 years or 3 years. You start with
Hmm.
that. You level set what the asks are. So that's one thing. Once you level set what the asks are, then you work with the team and to create a plan in where you want to be and how you want to be there. I think once you do those things, then you understand what the gaps in the process is, whether the gaps are in your basically, I would say, the process side of things in the leadership, or it is
Hmm.
in the management side of things, or in the technical side of things. So
Right. You
that's
identify it along the way. Once it's
yes.
been being executed, you can identify it along the way rather than trying to address it at the start, which is unfortunately sometimes a problem. Go ahead.
Yes, you cannot always address everything at the start, right? It's a
Hmm.
process. You know
Yeah.
things, that obviously, see, at the end of the day, there are known unknowns and unknown unknowns. The known
Hmm.
unknowns part, you will definitely know and have some sort of idea how do you solve it, either at the beginning or during the process.
Hmm.
The unknown unknowns, you will solve it as you grow in the
Hmm.
path, or you
Hmm.
as you grow in the process, or as you go through the process of delivering things.
Excellent. And I'd love to shift this conversation and to conclude this part of the conversation with AI. And I want to understand the application of AI in these particular workflows and the workflows that you do at your company. So I think what's talked about a lot is the capability of AI, and I think that's very good. What's not talked about enough is the limitations, and
Yeah.
those limitations is exactly how you essentially will be applying and using AI at your company. So from your perspective, where does AI have its limitations in terms of these workflows? And how does it impact how it can be applied to the company?
So let me put it this way: this is all going to be my personal.
Sure, sure,
These are all my personal opinions. I'm not going to
sure.
reflect on anyone. This is not AWS or
No worries.
Amazon's opinion per
I
se.
understand.
So my personal opinion is, AI as at a pace right now, it is solving problems that we were not able to solve in the past. That's one thing, no
Mhm,
doubt about it.
mhm, mhm,
But one of the things, the problem that it is solving is the code that was being written at 1x speed in last decades that we knew, it has gone up like 1000x at this point. So that is the second thing, right? But the bottleneck, I still feel, is in the process. Meaning, what is the
mhm,
process? When you develop software, writing code is just one part of the process. You test it, you make sure it is stress tested, you make sure that there is no security vulnerabilities, and
mhm,
you deploy in production. Essentially, if you are deploying in production at a larger company which has
mhm,
multiple uh, regions in place, it is going to take weeks and months.
Hmm.
So if not months, it will take at least weeks. So the code, I think I have seen that the bottleneck is has moved away from the left hand side to the right hand side,
Hmm.
meaning uh, the problems are being already solved for the developing of the code, but the
Hmm.
rollout, testing, integration, tests, finally making sure that there is no vulnerabilities and rolling it out to production environments. I think the rollout part has kind of, in my head, I see it as a bottleneck, and I'm pretty sure it is going
Right.
to evolve. So that brings on to the second thing,
Hmm.
right? As code is being written, I think one of the bottlenecks, it will be like if we try to retrofit our new deliverables into older mechanisms and older pipelines and old, I mean, pipelines is just one of the mechanisms there. In the older
Hmm.
mechanisms of rolling out code, it is going to be a bottleneck for a long, long time. I think
I'm very glad you said that.
yes.
And
So
the reason, yeah, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
finish your thoughts, please.
The reason I was going to say that is because I actually spoke to a principal AI engineer in McKinsey, and his thesis is that there's not enough subject matter experts to review the workflows that AI has produced, and that's
Yes,
actually where the bottleneck is. A
yes,
hallucination in the code in a healthcare industry or in a particular finance industry is a legal issue. This is
yes,
not something that can be fully automated yet. It's
yes,
actually subjected to the amount of people that can review these workflows. And on top of that, you mentioned security issues. I think the company, if you're aware of the aviatrix, one of the biggest I spoke to the CTO, and one of the biggest problems they're solving is how to solve the security issues when you're doing agentic AI at scale. So
yes,
I think this is where I think a lot of the conversation need to be talked about is where
yes.
are we in terms of capability? Because I think AI is great, the fact that it can automate a lot of things and the fact that it can make things far more efficient. But I think that it's not talked about enough how much where the limitations are. So I did interrupt you on your third point potentially. So what was that other point?
So, no, see, one other thing is, I think, again, this is my personal opinion. One of the things is that whatever we have built in the past, if we try to retrofit deploying our AI outcomes or AI code in the same pipelines or same mechanisms, that is something that's going to be detrimental for us. I think,
Mhm.
I think sooner or later, people will start thinking about how do we redo these things.
Mhm.
So reinventing the wheel is what my term is here. So
Mhm.
how we deploy code or how do we roll out code in production is what is the major bottleneck in my head, and the
Mhm.
process needs to be re-evolved. So this
Mhm.
is where I see the industry might shift in the next few years. Whatever people were doing, because with you can use AI itself to redo the whole process itself, right from delivering code to deploy in production, redo the whole path. I think for enterprise customers, I think larger companies, one of the bottlenecks or challenges that they'll face is how do they make that step? The first step is writing code, but there are three or four other steps that is there after writing code. That is
Mhm.
where major challenges will people will start solving those challenges as sooner or later.
Very good. Well, thank you for sharing this perspective. What we'll do now is go ahead and shift this conversation to a little bit more about you on the personal side. And the first question I have for you, Chira, is what is something about your life that you wish more people knew about?
What? Sorry, come on. So what
What
is?
what is something about your life or about you that you wish more people knew about? It's a difficult question, by the way. I know it's a difficult question.
So see again, I'll be happy to share. Again, this goes in with what you told me earlier. So you lost about 70 pounds, right? So
Hmm.
trust me. Again, I used to be very heavy back in 2010s. Then
Hmm.
one thing I did was I don't look like I do anything right now, but I have run like 10 or 15 full marathons. I think 11, if I'm not wrong. I don't know if you're able to see my medals. It's right there. So,
Wow.
I've done like 11 full marathons and 6 to 7 halves. But I had some health challenges because of which I stopped running, and then I gained the weight all back.
Hmm.
So, so again, I think one of the things that I have normally, again, this also reflects in my personal life, is I'm not afraid of taking or trying new things out. So that is one thing, again, I normally feel like people might take out of my life. That's one thing. And another thing is, uh, I'm not afraid of going wide in terms of what I explore. So depth is obviously one thing that you explore. I always feel that when people talk about, hey, you should know a lot of things in depth, rather, sorry, you should know a couple of things in depth, but
Hmm.
not a lot of things. I kind of have a other psychology where, a philosophy where I say that it is always good to know a lot of things.
Hmm.
It's always good, because if you
How
know
things
a lot
work.
of things, yes, in this world there are tons and tons of things that you don't know. If you know a lot of things, then I think you can start from any place. And
Patterns.
yeah,
You can see
it's
patterns.
yes. This is one thing I see that not a lot of people look at. And I think one of the things that people don't try to take different challenges. And I see it as a pattern. As people grow into their careers, they try to stick into the same particular area that they worked in. I feel like people should be more open to taking more challenges. People should be more
Hmm.
open to trying out new things. And again, see, for my case, even within the limitations of visas and everything that I've been very,
Hmm.
very fortunate, and a knock on wood, I've been there at the right place at the right time for multiple things that has come in my
Hmm.
way. I feel like people should not look at the width part as a bad thing per se. They should
Hmm.
take that as a with open arms, because it always takes you a much longer pace.
Right. And one thing I wanted to say about what you had actually said was about the fear factor. I think it's really important to not let your fears control you, because the second that you and I just had right now, we're never going to get that second back. You have a limited amount of time on this earth. And
Yes.
I actually, one of the scariest things I did was I was in high school when I did this TED talk. So I was not a public speaker kind of individual. I was not interested in having to do a TED talk in front of thousands of people. I did not want to do that, but I knew that time is limited. I might not get this opportunity once again. The more you push off something, and the more you push it off because of the fear, you have to understand that that's time you'll never get back, and the time you get tomorrow is not guaranteed. So I
Yep.
can really appreciate that perspective of the fear component. So I appreciate that. Now, I don't know if you're still in your 20s, but I would like to ask you this question, and this is a question I do ask everyone my guests. What do you think is the biggest difference between when you were in your early 20s, if you're still in your 20s, or just in general, what do you think is the biggest difference between you when you were 20 and you now?
Biggest difference between 20 and now. So very, that's something very close to my heart.
Hmm.
So I don't try to change things anymore where I see that my time is not valuable. So
Hmm.
I consider my time and uh, uh, my mental health more important. I place a lot of importance in that. So I again, that's you don't try to move a mountain, you just move around it. So
Hmm.
I've known about this thing for a while, but my dad told me long time back growing up. And but thing is, once you start looking at those things, when you start facing problems in your life, so one of the things I normally, I tell this to multiple people I come across, and multiple people I do, multiple people or friends, colleagues, engineers that I work with. I told them that don't try to change things that is not in your control. So
Hmm.
try to move around it and move past. These are the things that will continue happening, because if you start spending your energy, you only have limited energy in life. So don't spend those things. Don't spend on things
Yeah. Yeah.
that is not worth changing.
Agreed. Agreed. So what I'll do now is go ahead and share a very concise perspective regarding health and fitness, and we'll go and conclude the podcast with the Cheers plans for this year. So the perspective I want to share is going to be revolved around the biggest bottleneck you're going to ever see when it comes to actually sustaining a health change, and that's really about how sustainable the approach is and if you can keep it long term. I think
Yep.
the primary issue you can see, and by the way, those are the only reasons why you wouldn't not be able to keep results. But as far as what I think is the biggest bottleneck is about the fact that the approach itself is pretty hard to adhere to. And I think a part of that is the fact that a lot of approaches are location dependent. And for people who have a lot of time that they can't give too much to, and their schedule is unpredictable, the ability to adhere to an approach where you have to go to a fixed location like a gym or like a studio and doing it on a consistent basis is a lot harder to adhere to than rather than prioritizing an approach that's location independent. And I think that the idea is the whole concept of philosophy behind this is you want an approach that adapts to your schedule as opposed to you making time for it in your schedule. So rather than focusing on a location dependent approach, focus on one that's location independent that can move with your time and your schedule. And something specific I recommend that can actually do that on the technically is actually the step count. And this is something I always talk about because you can do this literally while you're watching this podcast. You can do this while you're potentially traveling, and anywhere there's ground underneath you, which I'm
Yeah.
assuming is going to be 99% of your life, you're going to be able to adhere to this approach. And that's the idea: is creating an approach that you can actually adhere to long term, because this is the biggest bottleneck as to why people will get potential results and then never ever keep it off. So hopefully that's a perspective that's actually doable and the one that makes sense. And this is actually, again, what I personally use to lose over 70 pounds and keep it off. So hopefully it gives a new perspective to what's being traditionally told and something that's valuable. So what we'll do now is go ahead and conclude the conversation on the fitness side and then move on to Chira's plans for this year. So Chira, tell me a little bit more about your plans for this year, whether it's professionally or personally.
So, so professional, I'll tell you. So, I don't differentiate both the things because you have one goal and all these things lead to that particular goal. This goal is this year's goal is figuring out what I want to do 20 years, 25 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a few plans, but I think I need to just reach out the plans and finalize what I want to do 25 years from now. So
Mm-hmm.
that is where 25 years or 30 years from now, when I'm retired. So that's my
Okay.
this year's goal. So I'm just chalking that path to that.
Sounds good. And where can people learn more about you, Chira? Is LinkedIn a good place to learn about you, or is there a particular part of the internet where there's better
I'm
way
not
to
on
learn
social
about
media,
you?
so LinkedIn is a good. And again, I'm always happy for a quick chat as well. So I'm not a social
Okay.
media person, so LinkedIn is what it is. So and I think a lot of things. Again, there's with all respect, due respect to social media, but it is not. I don't think I'm meant for social media. So
Okay.
from the
Yeah.
professional side of things, it's
Yeah.
definitely LinkedIn. But if you want
Okay.
to know more about my personal side of things, I'm always for a chat.
Okay. Cool. Sounds good. Well, Chira, thank you for your time today. It was a pleasure. This was Ari Mohin.